Hello, my name is Kelly Heckman, and I am the Executive Director of FiXiT, a nonprofit dedicated to ending companion animal overpopulation by creating marketing incentive-based strategies to give all pet owners the desire and ability to get their animals spayed and neutered. In this webinar, I'm going to discuss how you can assess where to find pet owners in your community that need special attention from you to get them to act and spay and neuter their animals. The problem we are fighting is overpopulation, which is defined as a population of species exceeding its carrying capacity. For companion animals, we have a problem of not having enough homes to care for the number that are being introduced into our communities, resulting in hundreds or thousands getting euthanized in our shelters every year. After I moved from St. Croix, where I was managing our Final Fix project, I relocated to St. Louis, Missouri, home of the Arch and Gateway to the West on the Mississippi River. Definitely a shift from the Virgin Islands, but because I wanted to learn about companion animal overpopulation issues in my new local area, I felt like this would make a good example where I was starting from scratch, just like you may be in learning where people in your communities need help the most. Like most, there is an overpopulation problem in this area. In data collated across 8 area impoundment facilities in 2011, the number of admitted animals that are not euthanized and presumably are returned to their homes, transferred, or found new homes is only 58%. A step up from the 20% on St. Croix, but there's certainly a lot of room for improvement. In 2012, St. Louis County Animal Care and Control, an open intake facility for the county, excluding St. Louis City, saw a live release of 55% for dogs and a discouragingly low 25% for cats. These are certainly numbers that can be improved. Specifically, we need to reduce the number of animals needing homes in the first place by reducing the total population that is breeding. So, with this information, we can define an objective to rectify these issues and increase demand for spay and neuter in our target communities. We want to make sure that we get the most bang for our buck and target pet owners that are most likely to be part of the problem. These are also the people that would be less likely to take action on their own. But we need to reach a volume of surgeries that will actually make an impact on population sizes of dogs and cats. If we meet this objective, we will be able to reduce the shelter intake rates, which would be an improvement for live release rates. So for this training lesson, we will discuss how to define and locate our target pet owners. We'll need to gather specific information about the problem in your community by having a discussion with the local animal shelters, animal control agencies if different, and looking at key demographic data in your community. Once you've narrowed down potential areas, doing some local surveys might provide additional insight. To start, shelters now are commonly equipped with shelter management software that track lots of information about each animal that comes into their facilities. Intake source, kennel location tracking, profiles to upload to adoption sites, and the outcome of each animal. For the records, you are interested in pet owner information. Where did the owner surrendered animals come from? And are there particular neighborhoods, zip codes, or other spatially distinct areas that have a higher impact than others? Was there a particular reason for surrendering their animals, or certain types of animals coming from those areas? More dogs, more cats, males or females, particular breeds? Any information your shelter can provide will be highly valuable for future marketing projects. Another useful source of information is where animal control calls are being generated. If there's a large number of free-roaming animals in a particular area, that can only mean that there is unrestricted breeding going on as well. Again, any additional information about the situation helps you. Were there stray animals, dogs and cats, particular breeds? Another means for generating some of this information is understanding the prevalence of strays versus owned dogs in a community is to conduct an animal census. This will give you a relative estimate of the number of animals in your potential target community and identify key issues increasing unrestricted breeding, such as allowing animals to roam free at any point during the day. Performing an animal census will be a topic of future SMART lessons. Your conversations may or may not be all that useful with the shelter or animal control, so another powerful tool is to look for particular socioeconomic characteristics in your community to narrow down your efforts. There are demographic characteristics that are associated with people less likely to spay and neuter their animals, including race, income, educational attainment, and population density. For the marketing, it is also important to consider other cultural considerations such as language barriers. Here on the right is a graphical depiction of the racial diversity of St. Louis using census data. The blue dots equal black majority and the red dots equal white majority. We can see the heavy racial segregation in the majority of the areas. You can also break down the diversity into smaller defined areas and help determine the volume of surgeries necessary. PetSmart Charities has developed a formula using population size and percent poverty to estimate the number of dogs and cats in an area. To make an impact, you will need to sterilize approximately 70% of the population, so this estimate helps us define a surgery volume you will need to ultimately fulfill in order to decrease the animal population. In a study conducted in the Gulf Coast by HSUS in 2007, they surveyed people to determine what demographics of people were more or less likely to spay and neuter. The green bars are for dog and orange are for cat owner statistics. They found that households with a total income of less than $35,000 were less likely to spay neuter overall. Dogs were less likely to be fixed for all economic groups, but the majority of low-income pet owners had not fixed their dogs. Then, cat owners with incomes greater than 75% are more than twice as likely to fix their cats than lower-income households. Not surprisingly, educational attainment is also an important indicator. Again, the green bars are for dog and orange are for cat owner statistics. The same study found that as people get more education, having some post-high school education significantly improves the likelihood of having both cats and dogs spayed or neutered. For cats, those with high school or less were more than twice as likely to have unaltered cats. Another question in the same study considered the comparison between rural and metro areas. Rural area pet owners were less likely to fix their pets. Of course, the availability of low-cost spay-neuter options in these areas would be expected to be much lower. And lastly, from this study, minorities were also found to be less likely to spay and neuter their pets. Non-white groups were twice as likely to have unaltered cats, and the majority had not fixed their dogs. Together, these demographic variables, including income level, educational attainment, distances from metro area, and race, paint a picture of the people likely to be good targets for our marketing program. This was a similar picture we found on the entire island of St. Croix. Thankfully, we can most likely identify these areas in your community using tools available online. Keeping with my St. Louis example, I went to the U.S. Census site, specifically American Fact Finder, to get a better understanding of how these demographic characteristics mapped out. I looked up St. Louis City, then narrowed down the search by zip code. For those of you living in the U.S., a separate video of this process will be available on the SMART site, as it is a little tricky to find all the options, but then when you do, it is a good exercise in assessing your area. I first narrowed down areas where household income was very low. I narrowed in on 3 interesting zip codes where the majority of households were making less than $35,000. 80% of the households in zip code 63106, 68% in zip code 63107, and 53.3% in zip code 63108 met this income threshold. I then looked at the same areas for educational attainment and found that people in the zip codes 63106 and 107 both had relatively low educational attainment, with the majority with a high school degree or less. But 63108 didn't follow the same pattern. In that zip code, only 25% of people in that area had a high school degree or less, with the majority having higher educational attainment. When I mapped out these potential targets, I see that 63108, with the high educational attainment, is actually in an area with many educational institutions, including teaching hospitals. The presence of many students must have skewed the income results. The other target zip codes, however, were both in a high minority area in what is referred to as North City. As it turns out, using the census data was an excellent predictor for selecting a target area. Stray Rescue of St. Louis is a large rescue group taking in 4,000 dogs in 2013. They considered both 63106 and 107, but ultimately narrowed down to a higher density 63107 as the location of their Families with Paws program, which is modeled after the Humane Society of the United States' Pets for Life program and funded through PetSmart charities. They have been interacting with the community and providing free spay-neuter, rabies and distemper vaccines, and microchips, with the overarching goal of building relationships in this community where people can't give the quality of care to their animals at a level they would like. Now, you can go to do the same exercise on census.gov and speak to your shelters, animal control agencies, and more to narrow your potential high-impact target areas. You can find links to census exercise video and an exercise worksheet on the assessment module page in the SMART program on FiXiT-foundation.org. While we're on the topic of using census information, let's think about the PetSmart Charities Population Estimator. Let's use our census numbers to get an estimate of the number of animals that are not fixed in our target area. To do this, you need the human population of that area and the percent poverty level as well. For my hypothetical target area in St. Louis, there were 4,503 people based on the 2002 census data. The poverty level in that area was 37.1%. Therefore, 2,832 people are above the poverty level and 1,607 are below. The industry estimate is that there are 4 dogs per person. This means there are 708 dogs living with people above the poverty line and 402 dogs living with people below. Their model estimates 90% of dogs above poverty line are fixed, but only 10% of dogs below. That adds up to be 677 unaltered dogs in our zip code. To reduce the rate of breeding, 70% need to be fixed, which is nearly 500. And having this number gives us a good estimate of the goal we need to reach in order to reduce the population size of dogs in this community. In future lessons, we'll continue to learn about our target community now that we have narrowed it down to selected geographic areas, and then start building our marketing program. Learn more about SMART, FiXiT, and our programs to help reduce the number of animals euthanized every year at FiXiT-foundation.org or join the conversation on social media.